Welcome back to another episode of Underground Strategy Podcast. My name is Max, and as usual, I am here with Tony. How has your week been, Tony? I know it's been a lot of exciting stuff happening.
The week's been good, Max. I've enjoyed it. We've been up to a lot of different things. The War Diaries have been going well, and a few other bits and pieces. But yeah, I can't complain. Good to be speaking to you tonight. How's the weather on your end?
The weather is excellent. Now, for me, it's a bit colder, so I actually enjoy it, as you know, when it's a bit colder nights and colder days. So at least hoodie weather. That's my kind of setting that I like. And I don't know, how is it in Scotland? Any rain, perhaps?
You guessed it. I mean, the it's reasonably mild for this time of year, but it's been a bit of rain. So yeah, I suppose that is what it is. And I think, talking about rain, I think one of the things we wanted to touch on today, besides a bit of a catch up and a stock take of the things we were doing, just to get some input from our listeners, but we also wanted to touch on kit a little bit. And I was thinking, one of the things that's important in a soldier's personal kit is some sort of waterproof equipment, and maybe a poncho. What do you think about that, Max? What kind of kit did you have?
That's actually an interesting question. And when you said poncho, it made me flinch a bit. I almost imagine, this. I mean, Second World War, Vietnam War, that's classic poncho wars. So, but I understand. Yeah, we haven't had in the Swedish army. I think, of course, we had a poncho at one time, but I think, since the 90s, we've had this kind of rain uniform that it's a bit bigger, and you put separate pants and a separate jacket above your uniform, which is reasonable. But of course, it doesn't breathe. So it basically makes you ass wet on the inside. So it's more a stylistic choice if you want to use it or not.
Yeah, I think we later on, we got that kind of, that rain uniform. It wasn't initially, though. It must have been a cost thing. But yeah, I think we probably had something that was from like the 70s or whatever, like this brown kind of poncho. And yeah, that was it. Good luck. Keep some dry clothes in your, we call, like most countries call it a bergen, the backpack. We called it a big bag. That's how creative we were talking about personal kits. So just make sure you had some stuff kept dry in there for afterwards, because surely you were going to get a little bit wet.
It's kind of a weird thing that always when it comes to like rain gear, and I get it when it comes to like chemical gear, but rain gear is always this old 70s vulcanized rubber, almost always. And I don't know. I mean, it feels like they should come up with something else. And I mean, they have come up with Gore-Tex, which has been pretty sweet. I know. I mean, my reflections from the book, for example, because I was not too happy with it when it was raining and then it was freezing during nighttime. And it was also quite loud. But they have a lot of these soft shell materials and Gore-Tex variants. So I guess there has to have been a development on that. And I know that the Swedish standard uniform, or one of them these days, are actually Gore-Tex uniforms. So I guess that would serve as some kind of rain kit.
Yeah, when you say wet and then frozen, yeah, that doesn't sound too good. And what kind of kit would you have to protect from that? Because I mean, wet, and then, I mean, besides the tactical stuff of making, the uniform making a sound, what did you have to protect from that frozen environment, or that very, very Arctic, Baltic conditions?
For the listeners, what we're referring to is an event, was an exercise on an island outside of Stockholm on the Baltic coast. It was October, and we came down from the north, Arvidsjaur, the regiment. We flew down, and it was snowing, and of course negative degrees up there. Then you come down to the Swedish autumn, which is not great when you go further south, because you have these wet, rainy days and then very cold nights. But this were exceptionally cold, so it was minus 10 Celsius or something like that. And there is basically no protection from that, because the only thing you can do is that, and we were also doing hard routine, where you have minimal change and kit with you, which means that you have one dry kit. So that means when it gets cold, or when it stops raining and starts snowing in the night, you change to your warm or your dry kit. And then in the morning, and of course you are not able to dry your other kit, but you put on your wet kit because that's the only way to get around it.
That's heavy. That's so heavy. And I know it's a topic that's important to you, Max. It's or not important. It's something that you have a couple of thoughts on. What do you think about personal kit these days? Is it too much? Have people gone a little bit overboard with with what they want?
You know me well, and you know that I usually have had this, or we have had this discussion many times. And I finally see it, or it pops up from time to time, but now the discussion is quite broad. You can see it in the United States, you can see it in Europe, you can see it in Asia, because, of course, with increased costs for the armies, and there's a lot of invention and new stuff, and they're getting they want to get bolder and harder and more modern, which means that they buy a lot of kit. And there is a lot of discussion, sensible discussion actually these days about kit. And my standpoint is that always, and a lot of people say, oh, but you're backwards kind of guy. But I'm not, because it wasn't better before. It was usually never better before. But we solved the same. They solved in the Second World War. They solved in the First World War. Maybe not as comfortable, but they solved the same kind of missions as we do today. It's a lot of the same kind of combat types. Still, yes, we have drones, we have more tech, but that's added tech. But there is also this tradition or culture among soldiers everywhere. If there is something new, if there is something, it's almost like fashion, like trending fashion. If something sticks out, you want to be the first one to have it, and you want to have it. And for the sake of having it. But most of the time, you can see people, infantry soldiers, people standing guard in regular mechanized battalions, and they have so much kits. They're so heavy loaded. I mean, when I was doing my basic ranger training, I was in the shift because we got something, we got like a vest, like a combat rig after that. But before that, we had this, it's like a belt and two suspenders, and you had 4 pockets. And you had in one pocket, you had 4 magazines. In the other pocket, you had this small kitchen. And in the other pocket, you had some snacks and some medic kit. And there was, I don't remember what I had in the 4th pocket, but it was and we solved the same things. It was the same reconnaissance. It was the same demolition. It was the same tasks, surveillance and all of that. And it worked well. And it was light and nice. And of course, you stuffed your pockets of your uniform also, but I'm not sure that you need that much kit. I'm not saying you shouldn't have newer kit, but every piece of kit that you have, you should first of all know how to use, because a lot of people don't. For example, when was that? Early 2000s, when the Magpul system came and it was popular. I mean, most people, they just had it because, it's easier to get out of your pocket. They didn't understand, they didn't know how to use the system. And then where are you going to carry all of this stuff if you don't know how to use it? And you also have to be bit sparse with it. If a carpenter comes to your house, he's not going to bring every single tool he owns. He's going to bring the tools that he needs, and if he needs to, have something else, he's going to go get it at home or in his car or something. I think it comes down to you have to be more comfortable in yourself and with the stuff that you have. And as a professional, you will learn over time what you need for specific missions. And of course, you can always have nice to have items, but you only need that much.
Yeah, that's an interesting point and a good discussion. So that idea of a balance, not to go to the extreme for everything. Yeah, and you think with what we see these days, because the defense industry is a bit like a business, and they pumping out new products, they need a market. The military's the market, and people are just saying, "Oh, those that can afford it." I mean, some militaries are, maybe in the developing world don't have that luxury. That we'll take that, this types of night sights and this type of whatever the new thing is that's being included.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is, as you say, it is a business. And I think it's more of a business now than before, because before there was always some gatekeepers and some balance, and it needs to last for 20, 30, 40 years before we change this to something else. So, but now it's just, you can see the European armies, they're just vacuuming the markets for new kit. not because really they need it, but they just want to upgrade. And sometimes, of course, sometimes you need to upgrade, but sometimes you also need to be, do we actually need this? It's like a simple thing like socks, for example. If you go up north, and especially at the Ranger regiments, you have one sock, one thinner sock, and instead of having another sock outside of that, you have these old like wool kind of small sheets of wool that you wrap around your feet. People have been doing that for 100, 200 years, and they still do it, and it's very cheap, and it doesn't need improvement because it's a great system, and they dry quickly and all of that, yada, yada. So, I mean, newer kit is not always better. Some newer kit is good, but I think there needs to be a balance, and everybody wants to look cool, but everybody doesn't need everything for, all the time.
Yeah, I mean, in most militaries they have that joke. If you have uniform or something you've drawn from the QM or from the stores that fits you, there must be something wrong with you, because everyone needs something that's too tight or too big or too berets falling down your ear and so on. It's certainly not the movies. So I want to build on that point that you had mentioned about the kit that's good enough for certain situations in the Ukraine at the moment, and maybe going a step away from personal kit, but it's let's not too far away. There's a big argument that Western weaponry, broadly defined Western weaponry, is really helping on the front lines. There's often sound bites and different reporting from there about how effective the new weaponry is, and without that they would really suffer. To be fair, the Ukrainians are saying, well, we're not going anywhere. We'll do our best with whatever we have, but this is really helping. So, it does kind of feed into this thing that you're speaking about, that there's a market for it, but then there's also that efficiency that it provides on the front, Max.
It is. I mean, we can't deny it, of course. Newer, better, more modern, more effective, less logistics, easier to train crews, artillery crews, or tank crews, whatever they're doing. But I think, like, if you look at Ukraine, for example, or you can look at Finland. Like Finland, they're very, very good with artillery. And I know we're going to talk about artillery in another episode, but they're exceptionally good with artillery and mortars because they have a long tradition with that. And they haven't gotten rid of anything. They have really, really modern stuff, but they're as effective with the old stuff, and they keep it because they know if the war hits, it's not just going to be modern stuff. And after a while, the modern stuff is going to be exhausted. It's going to be harder to replace. It's harder to repair. So I think definitely there's a good point of keeping up to date with the older, less refined equipment, but be able to excel on that. And then the new equipment, new artillery, new tanks, that's just going to be a bonus. And you can see a lot of the stuff in Ukraine, a lot of the spine of the Ukrainian defense now is with older stuff, and they treat the newer ones as a bonus. Even if they're much more effective, they still have to have many barrels in the same direction. So yeah, I think it's a wise strategy to keep up to date with everything.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. There's always in the technology space, they say there's technical debt. So you have a system that comes in and it's a legacy, but you still need it. It still works. And then not directly similar, but we tend to use the stuff that we know quite well too. So that is important. I know for certain armies, an assault rifle, although there might be different iterations, it's not really that different to something that even comes from the 60s or 70s. Maybe a few tweaks here and there, some more changes in engineering, making it more efficient, but it really is, the basis is similar. But I also think we have to, and you had mentioned it earlier, Max, we have to keep up with the trend of innovations and technology, and I think the history has shown us that, right? And where we are currently with drones, it's really undeniable the impact that it has on the modern battlefield.
Yes, 100%. And I mean, of course, we are always going to go forward, never go backwards. Yes, I think the overlap should be over longer times, because at least in smaller countries, for example, like Sweden, we like to change it out, like everything in one go, which is not good. Just overlap it, keep the old stuff in with the new stuff, and introduce it slowly on the units. Get comfortable with it without all the problems that everything comes with in the beginning, and etc. etc.
Yeah. No, I think we'll need to, talk about kit, personal kit, and how it impacts in operations in a deeper dive in future, Max. I wanted to touch on just some of the things that we were doing. It's been a busy period, and I don't mean to abruptly cut off our kit discussion, but I just wanted to mention a few things. I think this week we have some interesting work that we're doing, and just previously we've published a couple of special issues of the War Diaries, which is pretty interesting. We had Peter de Clercq on a previous episode, and then also he's published 2 issues of the War Diaries. Really interesting content. And then the last one, also very interesting, was Hex, Max.
Yes, I mean, we have, as you said, we have had a lot of good guests lately, and I'm so excited that Peter de Clercq chose to publish or to write an article that we could publish. It's a really great one, and I hope everybody has looked at it. Otherwise, go to Narratives on Underground Strategy, and you will find them all there. And also Hex, very good chat. I mean, the pod was out last Sunday, and he also released a really good article this Friday. So it touches base on what it's all about, more or less, these days, or one of the big issues that we have with cyber war and cybersecurity. And I mean, he has a ton of experience as a naval officer, so he knows the military side, and he connected so well with the civilian side because, So I think it was really, really good discussion, really great article. Go in and read it if you haven't. It's also under our narrative section on Underground Strategy.
It was pretty cool. And then we know coming up, we have a couple of good podcasts with Karen Horn talking about POWs, and that's also going to be interesting. And I think we also have one coming out shortly with Tom Thorpe, Max.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, we had a really, really good chat with Tom Thorpe recently, and we're going to publish that a bit in the future. But he's a very experienced podcaster and a historian. He has done plenty of research on combat morale, which is a really interesting subject. It's often forgotten. I mean, you speak about it, from time to time, maybe at officer school or something like that, but you never really hear that discussion out in the open that much. So it's really interesting. And I think he was writing for his PhD, right?
Yeah, you're right. So he did it as part of his PhD, and then it'll be one of his books that will come out in the future. And as you mentioned, combat morale, we all speak about it, but the depth of research, we almost refer to it almost anecdotally. Yeah, they surrendered because the morale had dropped. Or yes, they did really well because there was high morale. But the actual detailed, data-driven research, I think that's still to come out. And fair play, there may be some folks out there that have done it. We just don't know. I don't know. But Tom's book will certainly be among them, Max.
Definitely. And I know I have some intel that he promised to write a short article for us on that. So I hope that will be in line when we release the episode with Tom.
Yeah, just a little teaser, a little taste of some of his research. I think that's going to be very good. Other than that, going forward, I think through the Christmas period, we have some cool things that we also have planned. We won't say too much now because, we don't want to give away too much. But all we're going to say is if you have any ideas for anything that you want to talk about, any suggestions for folks that you think will be really cool to come onto the spot, just give us a shout, drop us a line. And then also, if there's a particular theme, we've recently updated our Military Legends theme. So that's some of the stuff for December that I mentioned. We won't say too much right now. But if there's someone in particular who you think meets the criteria, just drop us a line and we will do our best to discuss that theme, to research it, or get some more information from you.
So except for all of this stuff, I know we're doing a lot with the podcast, our narratives, combat diaries, war diaries, these special editions. We also actually, one of our main things that we do, you and I together, is write to write books, and we always have projects going. We have recently released the book that we wrote, number 788, and we are working on the Swedish translation of that, or we're not working, it's done. We are just getting it to market. But we're also doing something else. What are you doing right now?
So at the moment, my main focus is a work with General Sereko. He is a retired Brigadier General of the South African National Defence Force, and we are busy writing his memoirs, and I'm just assisting, so I'm an assistant author in this, and it's really an interesting project. He is one of the few senior officers, and I don't know of any other autobiography out there at the moment of a Black senior officer, Brigadier General, who had served since the 80s up until 2024. So a tremendously long career, 40 years, operations from Angola, DRC, and then even and his last post was as the General Officer Commanding of the Modern Light Brigade. So I'm in the middle of that research, lots of interviews, lots of work with General Sereko, and we're looking forward to a very interesting and insightful book. How about yourself, Max? What are you doing at the moment?
I'm going to tell you what I'm doing in a moment, but I just need to reflect over that. I mean, you know how much I look forward to the Sereko book, and I couldn't ask for anyone better to assist him in editing and writing that. So I'm really psyched about that. Myself, I am working on my sequel, which we will talk about someday. I'm not even going to give you the topic of it right now, but it's going to be exciting. And then I'm working on a project with Bob that we had. He wrote some articles for us about his operations in South Africa and his work with the London recruits. So that is what I'm doing. I'm helping him with that and enjoying that tremendously. And I hope that we will get him on the podcast someday in the future.
I think we will. So Bob Newland, very interesting man, did some cool work, as Max said, in the past, now writing up his story. And that's a lot about what we do. So we like to bring these personal narratives to life and share them with different people. And that's a lot about what we do in Underground Strategy. If you have any thoughts on that or any ideas, please ping us. We're always up for the chat. We love the discussion. It's really why we started this whole project. And then the last thing I will say is that we have a couple of cool podcasts scheduled for December. We won't say too much about that right now. But if you have any themes that you want to discuss, perhaps it's a continuation of the military legends one, or there's an idea, or you have a suggestion for someone interesting to be on the pod, just give us a shout, DM us, email us, or on any of the social media, reach out to us, and we'll be sure to get back to you. And as always, last words to you, Max.
Thank you, Tony. And I can just put a bit of pressure on what you said. Reach out to us if you want to be on the pod, if you have something, ideas, material. You might even have a finished manuscript that's just lying around there. We will help you bring it to life if we can. But we are always open to chat about that. Don't forget to check out our narratives, Combat Diaries, War Diaries. There's a lot of exciting stuff there. We have a lot of issues published. And also, Sunday Sitrep. I want to do a little promotion for the Sunday Sitrep. We have now 3 issues or 3 volumes of the Sunday Sitrep. It's a bi-weekly newsletter. You just sign up and you will get it automatically, and it comes out every other Sunday. And it's a short, like 5-6 minute read about what has been happening in the military world in the last 2 weeks, that we try to give you a good rundown of that. So don't forget that. Just head into undergroundstrategy.com and sign up if you're interested in that. And that's about it from us. And I think we will see you all next week. And until then, you have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.